Okay. If we can begin on this end, yes. Oh, if you can say maybe who's in your group too, if you know the names. If not, it's okay. Okay, I'm Jackie. Chris, Sylvia, Ben, and Shani. Where we were all in the group and we said violence is harmful relationships to humanity with a few qualifiers. And really briefly, the qualifier being that, harmful relationships, we are all in a relationship to one another. I mean, system is very broad, and we're all in the system, but relationship also implies not just the broad, it's the specific. And so, being that we're all in relationship to one another, we included the word relationship. And humanity, whatever affects humanity will inevitably affect the rest of the world. The environment, the natural life that's on this planet. So, great. Well, check it out. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So I'm bad. I don't know the names of my group. You're not bad. But they can introduce themselves. Can my group say your name? And I'm Hilda. This is hard. This is hard to do in a group of when people have different ideas about violence. But we came up with violence is hate. It's intentional and unintentional. It's institutional and it's oppression. We were talking about exclusiveness and we ended up talking it out because I think that the idea of this was more specific in terms of when violence happens between two people or between the two partners, whether it's an organization or a person, there's going to be an other that is excluded. So that's the power show. Those that have power, those that don't. But I was very uncomfortable with putting exclusive because I think that violence is institutional and is oppression and is pervasive. So there's no way whether you are the person that commits violence or is the person a victim of violence that you can be excluded from experiencing violence.
Right now, I just keep hearing quotes and things rambling in my head, and what affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly.
Yeah, exactly. So I was very uncomfortable with putting exclusive under violence because I don't think it's exclusive. Last year. Thank you.
I'm Corey and Tania, and in our group we're Becky and Sherry and Chris. And so we had 4 different thoughts on violence. We have extra words. Number 1, we had violence is aggression towards others. Number 2, violence is taking another's dignity. Number 3, violence is wrong. And number 4, violence begets violence.
Yes, I love the illustration. Yes.
Hi, I'm Denise Adams, Education Institute for Civil Rights and Services. And our group came up with violence is deprivation and a lack of, which is action-driven, destructive, and oppressive. And the one thing that I like to say is our group is, say your name, Okay. I was the one that was not really extensive with a lot, because I look at violence as a different approach. My group more or less looked at it as something that, is oppressive. It's the cause. I mean, I look at the cause of the violence, beyond the cause, looking beyond the violence. It's action-driven. What caused the violent behavior? And so I was basically, and no offense to my group, I love all of you all. I mean, everybody that knows me know I love everybody. However, and this, I do stand divided because I think that the action that caused the violence is beyond the violence. So that's, you have to look at what caused it. The root cause it, absolutely. And so I do love you all, though.
Take it on.
For the whole group.
Okay. Denise Adams, and I think the last way we make
And, I hope the group remember I actually turned my 4 words into a phrase. I just put violence is unnecessary, disrespectful, empowering, and justice. So, when we were thinking, unnecessary, we thought there's always alternative options before you develop to violence. So, things can be dealt with in a non-violent way. And we see that through Dr. Martin Luther King's actions, proof in the pudding. So you don't have to, you don't have to be a person resort. Disrespectful, to anybody, whether it be children or, parents, teachers, it's a disrespectful act. Disempowering, we were, going along the lines of an incorrect use of power, so that was how we put it into one word. So that was where we were going. And injustice, it's just not fair for anyone to be subject to of any kind, whether it be physical, emotional, or
Omar.
My name is Omar. I'm within the College of Ed at UIT as a doctoral student in ed policy as well as in African American studies. These are our 4 words. If we had to do a phrase, I guess it would be systemic conditioning of dehumanization. The first piece is I put the first piece you put dehumanizing because it, kind of what Phil was talking about earlier, that violence can be something of you're dehumanized as being a victim of violence, but also in the act of committing violent acts, that you are dehumanized just by inflicting violence on others. The second piece is systemic, and just kind of understanding that it's not just individualized or just interpersonal transgressions, but that it's systems in place that perpetuate and maintain it. The third piece is conditioned, just to kind of challenge the idea that people are inherently violent. Oftentimes you hear that community, this community, that space, those folks are just violent people. So something just to understand that it's external and imposed. And the last piece we put contagious or viral. And I think that one of the things that it spreads, but also just the idea that it gets normalized, that it's okay to be violent, and then that in itself allows for it to spread.
And what was your phrase? How'd you phrase together?
Systemic conditioning of dehumanization. And I didn't even introduce myself, so
Take it out.
Our phrase is really cool too.
Don't worry about it. He ate the leaves, pulled it out. We can do this.
I'm the executive director of Chicago Workers Club. And at my table were Julia, Kat, Joanna, and Krista. And what we put down is violence, and sorry we wrote it so small. Violence is a manifestation of hate. For our 4 words, and the interesting thing is we came to that like in 2 minutes and wrote it down. And then the rest of the time was really interesting. We decided not to change it, but it produced a lot of discussion. One coming from me is I find the more I put myself into something, even if it's uncomfortable, the more I get out of it. And when I start to feel violent, just to be real straight, it's because I'm afraid.
Amen.
Just the way it is.
Amen.
And we also agreed that violence isn't physical, but we agreed that it comes from the root word violate. Violating someone's space. So it's not just, hey man, we're going to get down, but you can literally just be like, that's violent, and that's violating. You're intruding. We talked about intruding into communities, intruding into other people's space. And as a man, I talked about that, how we're conditioned regarding women. We're conditioned to try to be in control all the time. So I tried to put little of myself, so I talked about fear. And then the group talked about all kinds of really interesting things about fear and conditioning and, again, violating. And so that's what we came up with.
That was really, really cool. They're all addressing something from your own perspective. It's important for us to share our perspective around such an issue, so we have a collective understanding of what we mean when we say violence. Are you going to wrap this up? Okay, cool. Now, could someone give me, and everyone talked about it, a specific example of Violence where it's non-physical. We already got an example of the mean mug, right? Just staring someone down, giving that look. First time I was mean mugged was by my grandmother. No one can out mean mug my grandmother. But what else? What's another example of violence where it's non-physical?
I don't know whether it's this, but I think what we were talking about was also the violence. There are different, like let's say, by not really doing any action, if you see violence, like being, instigated by someone else, that you are also like part of being a problem in a way. So the inaction, so that's a more of a instead of a being, it sounds like aggressive, but in a way like passive type of violence where you are not really trying to action.
Someone was talking about the desensitization, overexposure, this type of stuff, just ignoring it is a type of support of it, right? Yeah. Things that we talk out against eventually stop, or that we're committed to. And when we do see it, we must try to address it. So as a nonviolent practitioner, we're always trying to create interactions of, I guess, love might sound corny, but that's really, what's that word? Don't ask me to say it. No, I got you. Right, the spirit of our interaction. That's why I have him around. I mean, I'm smart enough to know that I don't need to know everything. But the definition of violence that we like to use, and you guys all hit it on the head, but use really heavy words for it, is that violence is physical or emotional abuse. That's the basic definition that we like to start our discussion from. Physical or emotional abuse. What do you guys think about that? Because it does fit in every example you guys gave. That little basic definition fits. I thought it did.
Somebody else said that, I think this was this young lady in our group was saying that they talk to people until you bring it out and they say, oh, they can identify that something that happened to them or something, but they don't know until it's brought out.
And we like to break it down to that basic definition for the purpose of understanding violence while we're together. Does it apply? I think. Can anyone think that that doesn't apply to the definition that was shared?
I think that the person who's committing violence may not see it as abuse.
Absolutely, sure.
So then how does it fit? I might feel it as abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say I'm committing violence because I don't see it as abuse.
Perhaps. Now, I ask you, though, if I use that same tactic against your sister or your mother, would you consider me violent against them?
But I would, but you might not, because for you it might be a way of defending yourself.
I understand, and I'm asking if I use that same type of defense directing it towards your loved one, would you consider me violent or abusive? With that person, even that person.
No, that's what I'm saying, that person might not.
And I think that's why it's so important to have this discussion. Because if you talk to the police in Oakland, they'll tell you that what they're doing is not violent.
Right.
But if you talk to the community, you might hear a different story.
Exactly.
Right?